Hi, I'm your DM, Jay.
And I'm El Ninja Cupcake.
And I'm Rekka Flair.
And I am Acquisition Rhymes, or Air, if you prefer.
And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom. Welcome again, everybody. We are back for another week. No incredible celebrity appearances, but we do have a special guest. You've come twice. If you come a third time, we're going to have to commission a face. Rekka Flair.
Hi, Rekka.
Hi, friends.
Today, we were going to delve deep into that dungeon crawl.
Well, what I have is actually a conjoint, I feel, dungeon crawl with Cupcake, in that we have a new favorite song. And have been obsessed with it.
Oh my god. Jerriford K. Horkums. I sat there and my jaw dropped. So it was like perfect timing. If you haven't seen the recent episode of C-Team, oh my god.
Oh, my heart.
My jaw dropped too, except it was my eyes, and the dropping was tears. It was a very beautiful song, played at the end of the very tail end of won't be the most recent episode of C-Team because of the way time works. But it was a very lovely ukulele-accompanied song written by one NPC love interest, Brahma Ludier, to Walnut Dontgrass, played by the incomparable Amy T. Falcone, who was just clutching her mouth the entire time, silently screaming, it looked like, as her DM played this song, and it was a touching moment.
I feel like I was watching her heart break and then grow back together and then break
awesome.
again.
It was incredible.
Beautiful.
And Jerry's voice is amazing. I mean, what can that man not do?
It's true. I would kill for that dude's voice. He's got a lovely voice. I do not have a lovely voice, but it did not discourage me from putting together a bad, but I did anyway, cover of the song, which is up on the tweets.
Hang on. I'm trying to find... Oh, it looks like all of that was lies. I couldn't find any truth
I
in there.
covered the song.
You covered the song, but it was great, and you did a wonderful job.
Okay.
So it's them Canadian pants on fire.
Yeah, an attempt was made.
You did a great job.
Well, it wasn't my.
You did a great job.
Okay, fine. I did a great job. Whatever it takes to move this conversation forward. And then I actually met another member of the Shadow Council who is a singer and asked for the guitar track I had recorded and also recorded it, and then met another member of the Shadow Council who did a cover of it. So it's been great just, making new friends along the way from one silly little thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you did a great job. All right, so Cupcake, I believe that you had a shout out as well
to that incredible DM, Satine Phoenix, for her new position at Wizards of the Coast. Womp womp.
Woohoo!
She is, I believe, in charge of the social media, and someone has informed me that she's going to be doing it remotely, so have no fear, LA. You still have your queen of the DMs.
That's it. It's true.
But since she and Kate are now at Wizards of the Coast, I've mentioned this, but I absolutely want to have like a vlog or something of those two going through like shopping and makeup and nerd out beauty television, please.
Mm-hmm.
I would love that intermixed with like D&D tips and DMing tips, and
yes,
I want to see all of that.
But seriously, Satine Phoenix, you're amazing and congratulations.
All right. Rekka, did you have a submission this week for the dungeon crawl?
I would have to agree with the new favorite song of our one Jerriford K. Horkins, but also there was a really delightful experience that kind of happened over Twitter with a number of the community, with Robin. I'm blanking on her full handle. So our Pixel Wizard posted a photo of Cthulhu with his fishing tree.
Ah, yes.
And I was just having a moment and said, "O Cthulhu tree," and just wrote that as the reply tweet. "O Cthulhu tree, O Cthulhu tree, how lovely are thy phalanges." I thought it was phalanges. I thought it was phalanges, but it's phalanges. Okay. And then Robin saw that and spun off of it and then wrote like 4 other verses and then recorded the song in like the middle of the night.
At Robin of Leylines.
Yes. She's also done really incredible embroidery artwork. I would liken them to paintings, to be honest, of the 4 characters with lots of delicious little Easter eggs and a beautiful one of Propha looking over the mantle, the little cranium rat, the whole thing. She's
It's
doing
been
a
an extremely
job.
musical week for C-Team fandom.
Yes.
I mean, kicked off with the rap group's release about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and then the song and show.
Rap Positions Incorporated.
There you go. That plug though. Absolutely check it out. It's my summer jam. I keep playing it. But that kicked things off, and then we had the song on the show, and then we had covers of that. 2 great covers I know, Ayers, and then a lady did a cover as well.
The lady in question, I just wanted to give a shout out because I mentioned her earlier. Anne Richmond, at Anne Richmond on Twitter, has a ukulele cover of Brahma-san. She has a lovely voice, so please check her awesome stuff out too.
Who did the singing over your chords?
That was at Character. Character TV was the person who reached out to me on our
Gotcha.
Discord and was like, hey, I sing. Can I have that track?
She did a great job as well. So many talented folks. And then we have this one as well with the Christmas tree. I mean, it's just every other day now. I mean, spoiling us with these great musical options.
This delicious content.
I won't go too deep into it. It's not going to be my dungeon crawl, but I do just want to shout out to the latest episode of Critical Role for making me cry. It was really good. Some stuff happened, some background came to light, and it was really good. Anyway, but no, my pick this week is going to be piggybacking off of our guest from last week. Power Score RPG has assisted in launching a new show with WebDM, this brand new show which is called RPG Network. If you go to WebDM's Twitter at WebDM Show, you will find a link to the most recent episode. It is called RPG Network, and as he described in last week's show, it functions exactly the same. It is a collection of clips from any Twitch or YouTube D&D show, any live play D&D show. You send in a clip from your show, they will add it into a compilation so you can try out and test a ton of different shows to see all the greatest stuff from D&D over the past week, really engage with the community at large and see how big and how diverse and how vibrant it is, and see all these super funny, super interesting, super dramatic moments from people's shows all at once, just in a flurry, a smorgasbord of D&D goodness.
How cool.
It is really, really cool. So if you have a D&D show that you're trying to get promoted, or if you have a show that you just think is really, really fun and you want to give them a shout out, send those clips to @PowerScoreRPG. He's collecting the clips. It's a weekly show going forward, so they're just going to be putting these clips together and putting them up once a week on the RPG Network. And there should be 2 episodes already out by the time this airs, so you have a little bit of a backlog. It's not a terribly long show. It's about 30 to 45 minutes total, so it's not like you're sitting through 2 hours of a Dungeon & Dragon live play session. It's just the best bits from a bunch of different shows all there together, so you can really get a taste of what's out there. And it is really, really good. And I am flabbergasted a show like this has not existed until now.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's such an obvious concept in retrospect, but now that it's here, it's genius. I love it. Sometimes on this show, we answer questions, but now is not one of those times. We are going to break format here today, and we are going to talk about a different dungeon. This one's called the Dungeon World. That's right. We are abandoning Dungeons & Dragons like a bad parent, and we're going to deeply engage with Dungeon World, our new family now.
This is the rebound episode.
Yep.
This is like, we left the exit. Now we're just hopping on to the first system that comes by with its
this
sleek,
cute
simple
little
rule
system.
set.
Yeah, I know.
No, I kind of think of this like as the boyfriend or girlfriend that you have in like middle school, and then you get up to the big leagues.
Yeah, this is your middle school crush or boyfriend that
you're going
that you
steady
knew.
with, and you break up because they don't like the same anime.
That's right. Dungeon World, we're breaking up with you next
No
week.
problems. It's like going home for Thanksgiving or winter break, and then you're just like, oh hey, I haven't seen you since.
It's
like,
the turkey drop!
Leave again. in 2 weeks.
Oh, what are you doing? Oh, still pot. Okay, cool.
So the turkey drop specifically refers to when you go home to break up with your ex during Thanksgiving because you've experienced all the cool stuff college has to offer and you want to be single.
The wonder. Multiple ability modifiers.
See, in Cincinnati, turkey drop literally means dropping a turkey off of a building or out of a helicopter.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, that's terrible.
Well, usually they're frozen.
Well, that's worse. Frozen turkey could do a lot more damage. We're wildly off course. So let's talk about Dungeon World. Air came to us. Our normal game went on break. And Air, who has had a long time interest in Dungeon World, saw his opportunity to seize the reins of his destiny and make Dungeon World happen. So during the break from Season 2 to Season 3 of our normal campaign, we've been playing a Dungeon World game that is slightly cursed. It does seem like the games have a difficult time manifesting into this reality.
Well, we've only missed 1 week, and it was Mother's Day, so I feel...
But somebody has missed every single session.
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
Well, because the party's
It's supposed to be 5 people, but it consistently has been 4. Kind of a rotating cast.
It was just that Rekka's sweet little halfling thief was, just kind of took a backseat, decided to play it cool, see how it all turned out.
Yeah. So we decided to try out Dungeon World. Air's playing as the DM, so expectations were sky high. And I think he's delivered on all fronts. By all accounts.
If I may, Jay, I am going to, and I admitted this to Haley secretly, I'm going to admit this all to you now. I had never run Dungeon World before. This was my first time.
I couldn't tell at all.
Really? Okay, I had you all fooled. I was really worried just because to give a kind of a brief overview of how it works, it's based off of, it's a hack of Apocalypse World, which is where its kind of core mechanic of roll 2d6 and add an appropriate modifier comes from. And it's all about having kind of 3 set difficulties. We talked about this a little bit in a previous podcast, but if you roll a 10 or better on your 2d6 plus mod, you get whatever you're trying to do based on the rules. If you roll a 7 and 9, you get what you want, but with some sort of consequence. And then on a 6 or less, you get screwed by the DM. They do something bad.
You learn from your mistakes.
You learn from your mistakes. And eventually it actually, in order to level up, you have to kind of branch out, because if you just keep using your best stats over and over again to do checks, you never really get a chance to level up. Because eventually when you have a +3 in a stat, it's almost impossible to get a 6 or less, because really the only combinations that'll do it are a 1 or 2, a 2 and a 1, or Snake Eyes. So,
it creates a more balanced, well-rounded character in the end, I think.
Yeah, it's a chance to grow. It's a chance to kind of lean into that. So anyway, it's very rules light and narrative first. I think it's a good system for jumping in and doing one-shots, or it's a really good system for folks that are new. I think it's also a really great system if you have a group of creative people who are maybe looking to do the cool thing as opposed to looking to do the thing that best maximizes the action economy. The person I wanted to get into this system most was Cupcake, because in our campaign I always find Cupcake's the ones like, can I try to do this? And then sometimes it'll work, or sometimes it'll be like, oh well, you already used your action for this or whatnot. And let me tell you, Cupcake did not disappoint. Cupcake, please tell the world about your Dungeon World PC.
In character, please.
Why are you laughing at me?
I'm not laughing at you. I am laughing at your delightful little pyromaniac that you made.
Little espresso bean.
She is. So I created Simber the Salamander, who is an immolator, and I loved this because this is kind of like D&D Light, to where if you're overwhelmed by like all the choices and stuff, it makes it so much easier. So Simber, not knowing the way that this whole game works, I guess is an advantage. I made her about 12 inches nose to tail. And she was kind of like a gecko salamander hybrid. And she talked like this! And she loved to cast fire spells, and her charisma was terrible, but she tried anyways.
She lit every defeated foe on fire, much to Jay's PC's chagrin sometimes. The thing I love most is that I want to say that it allows you to embrace creativity, because the Immolator class has a move called Burning Brand, which allows you to like sculpt weapons out of flame, essentially. And Cupcake managed to get through every combat we've run so far, never using it once. Nope. She's used another one that lets her just kind of conjure existing flame to her will, and has used that to great effect. And it's been Simber scares me a little, but it's a good scary.
I definitely, so the last game that we played, I had this great picture in my head of this little pyromaniac salamander in her little charred robes, like rummaging through this burning corpse, griping about how at least this guy got to be dead before they burned him, and just trying to loot his body. And here come like these two big, I guess like his henchmen,
Yeah.
and she just rips off burnt dude's hand and throws it at him. Like,
No.
yes.
She's a little
Yeah.
she's a little off kilter, which is great.
Yeah. And then since the whole point was this guy in her backstory, this guy that she wound up burning, he and his sons were on a hunting trip, and they caught Simber and decided they were going to cook her alive. And that's how she became an immolator.
She was
So-
born in flame.
Yes.
You merely adopted it.
Yeah.
I was born in it.
Yeah. You just remember, pain voice. Yeah.
So the game definitely went a little murder hobo.
Well, I guess because I don't know if we set up that this was someone that Simber would have wanted revenge against because she tried to kill her in past.
A little murder hobo.
Just a
Or be eaten world.
That's not good audio. I don't like that audio. Let's not make that a thing.
Because Jay was playing a cleric. Jay actually jumped in playing an NPC cleric that we had introduced in the first game, who was kind of like a Bible Belt preacher type, and you really played it like you were a good boy. You're with these, some of them were a little unhinged, which was great.
All of them.
The moral compass doesn't quite point due north.
Yes.
Let's just say.
Yes. So there was some great kind of inter-party conflict as they're downing these people, and Jay's cleric is pouring healing potions into their throat. Like, no, we don't need to do this. Stop burning them.
Yeah, it's over. The combat's actually done.
Yeah.
They're running.
But what if I don't want to stop?
Well, that was what I encountered.
Yes, he encountered a degree of murder hoboism.
It's true.
I merely provided more daily rations.
Very dark.
You're welcome.
Where does Simber stop and Cupcake begin? Who can say? Oh,
I had the visual of this little, the scales being all blackened with almost like lava in between them, and she had this little twitchy thing where she'd periodically lick her eyeball.
yes.
Those
Like
just
a spark popping out
Yes.
of the fire. Yeah.
Okay.
J-
So
Yes, Jay. Tell me your thoughts.
So let's talk about the system. We played it 2 times now. Some of us have played it once. Me and Rekka have played it once. You two have played it twice. Let's talk a little bit more about the system as and our experiences with it, because ultimately the benefit of playing a system that you've never played before is to get new ideas, great ideas, and take them away as you continue playing other systems and sort of develop what you like, what you don't like in a role-playing system. I mean, obviously, there's the potential with any new system you play that it could replace your old system as a superior option, but I don't really feel like Dungeon World is a viable alternative to Dungeons & Dragons for a long-term campaign.
No.
I feel like it's definitely more geared towards short-term, kind of off-the-cuff sort of play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe 10 sessions tops I could see going in the system before you've sort of explored all that you really can do in your character. Because your options are... Simplified is a good term. Your options are definitely simplified. At a certain point, simplified becomes restrictive. 5th edition has a lot less options than previous editions, and I have some players, in my Friday game especially, who actually kind of chafe against the boundaries of 5th edition, like, oh, I really miss all the feed options and things like that. In a system like Dungeon World, they wouldn't last 10 minutes, because mechanically there's not a lot of options, but the fun is that you can kind of spin what options you have narratively a lot more freely. There's a lot less restrictiveness on the specific parameters of each ability that you have. So a single ability is like 5 different abilities if you can create those 5 different abilities with your imagination and how you utilize it. So it's really been on that narrative bent.
Yeah. And the other thing about the world games is they're very hackable is the term they use. So if there isn't, like, if you want, D&D, like, if you think about a cleric, they have domains for different flavors of faith. It's very generalized in Dungeon World. You have a cleric, you make up a god, you make up a way that you, in some way, commune with that god. So it'll be like penance or trial by combat or something like that. Or you can make up your own, and there are things for that. But so, like, it could be, communing with nature or something if you wanted to get that nature cleric flavor. I think the sticky bit of it is, like, I always thought it was like, well, this system is super open. So I was trying to encourage folks, like, do whatever you want. Just run it by me and we'll figure out a way to make it work, which I think is just a good kind of DM strategy in any system. But I think folks really want to see the scope of the sandbox as it was determined by the sandbox builder before venturing outside it.
Right. I don't want to homebrew a class if I don't know the power level of these different abilities. And I don't want to read every single class's power level,
Power level is, like, if you try, because there are ways to, like, min-max in Dungeon World, but honestly it wouldn't be any fun. Like, you could get to roll more dice, but it's honestly trying to be non-systemic. It's the dice are there simply to push the narrative forward, and that's it.
The paladin can choose a damage to be immune to for the duration of their adventure. So if you knew that you were going to go fight a bunch of skeletons or whatever, you could just be immune to, like, bludgeoning damage or slashing damage, and then you don't have to worry about, like, I'm just immune to swords for this adventure.
Yeah, I'm immune to hurting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not hurting. It would have to be something. I think they specifically list, like, a type of weapon or damage. So, like, if you're going to fight a fire dragon, though, you could just say fire, and then fire breath does nothing to you. So that is going to be a problem for your DM.
That might be smart.
I mean, dragons also have teeth and claws. Yeah. And that's the thing.
And they can step on you.
And I think if you come at it from, like, a mechanics first point of view, it would be like, well, this is obviously ridiculous. Like, you can make yourself invulnerable to anything. What if that comes up? I think it also leads back to the classic DM trick is they don't know what's behind the door until it happens. It was never a fire dragon, it was a frost dragon, or they could be immune to fire and the dragon will get them in some other interesting way narratively. And they still get a chance to, use that fire invulnerability because the dragon doesn't know, breathes fire on them. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay, time for biting. But I definitely think it's when you come to a narrative game, if you start thinking about it in terms of, like, builds or whatnot, it all kind of falls apart. And I think it worked well for our group because I think most of our players are more of and Rekka, I've definitely seen this in you too, especially the first time we played and you're like, can I pull down the cod piece, which we've mentioned before. I think I've definitely seen oh, Cupcake, did we not?
I'll tell you about it later.
Yeah, when you're older. But I've also seen a lot of instances where you've tried to, like, be like, I want to use the spell this way, or what would happen if I tried doing this? And I always worry when a system tells a player, no. Like, and I always feel bad about it. And so I like a system that's a little bit more narratively focused, but I also think that there's a degree of getting comfortable with it in terms of how open it is. Like, it's like, oh, I want to play a nature cleric, but there's nothing on the sheet here, so I guess I can. You certainly can. It's just they don't preface that as an option, I suppose.
Right, but I think that coming at it from another angle, I think that having the mechanics reflect and demonstrate a nature cleric mechanically, giving you specific abilities that only you can do as a nature cleric lends itself towards a certain verisimilitude, but it also adds a layer of specialness to picking a class. Like, picking that class feels important because you have access to a particular skill set that nobody else can do. In a narrative game, you lose that element. Anybody can do a lot of different kinds of things, and if any kind of cleric can cleric in any way that they want, then there's not really a specialness to being this type of cleric that there might be in the other games, if that makes any sense. Like, I think that what I really found interesting from the Fates game, from this game specifically, and from the Adventure Zone when they did a Fates arc, I liked the degrees of success and failure. I liked overwhelming failure. I liked failing or succeeding and then I liked overwhelming success. And so I included an element like that in Jorika's power.
Yes.
Where she has the degrees of failure. And it's definitely something that I would probably include more. So on skill checks in Dungeons & Dragons, on a roll of 10 to 15, when the success is 15, there might be a situation there where you could do a fail forward. Like you succeed at the task that you were trying to do, but perhaps you break a weapon or you end up with an injury that causes some sort of debility or something like that. It's a different way of handling failure that's not so punishing. Because I do feel like a lot of the time, I feel like I always say negative things about Critical Role. I love Critical Role. It's one of my favorite shows in the world. I don't like necessarily the super punishing way they handle failures in that show sometimes.
Really? I find that so interesting because Haley and I were saying the exact opposite thing, that they normally fail forward. Like a 1 for jumping across a pit is normally grasping onto the edge with Matt. Like they always seem to fail in some narratively interesting way. So I find that interesting.
I don't know. I feel like they're always like, maybe it's just the way that he keeps the tension very high, but I always feel like they can never succeed at anything they try easily. Like it always comes like very, very hard for them.
Like you have to absolutely critical, you have to get that 20.
Well, yeah, you have to make every check. Like if you fail a check, then you just don't get to do the thing.
And it's like, oh, you still trip or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was one of the early ones where Marisha's character was in manacles and she wanted to, like, elbow a guard and then punch another guard. Well, Matt's like, roll in athletics. And she's like, well, can it be acrobatics? And he's like, no, I think like this is athletics. And she failed because she's not good at athletics. She has dexterity, not strength. And so it's just like, yeah, you just kind of fumble around awkwardly and they all look at you like you're dumb. And it's like, that's kind of, I don't know if that was like a very fun moment. And I feel like there's a lot of moments like that where they like, oh, I want to do something really cool. And it's like, well, roll. And it's like, oh, I didn't roll that great. Whereas in C-Team, it would be like, I'm a monk, I want to, jump over this and then try and make it 2 attacks. And Jerry would be like, oh yeah, you're a monk, you could definitely do that, like, you're a monk, for whatever. And so it's like, oh yeah, because that's what they're good at, they don't even have to roll for that stuff. They have to roll for the attacks, but they don't roll for, like, doing the cool flip or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I think I feel like Jerry's a little too soft at times, and I feel like Matt's a little too harsh. I think that 3 degrees of success and failure could be the nice middle ground.
I like the 3 degrees very much. I mean, granted, I rolled at the wrong end of that a lot. In the one game that I played, it was a lot of, like, 6s and 5s, and okay, you fall out of the tree.
Well, the game you missed, they were rolling super hot. It was all 10 plus like the whole time. There were very few 6s.
I literally did not roll below a 9 for the first hour and a half of the game.
Not once. It was very frustrating and great to see, but as the GM, when I get to pick one of the fun things, and the reason I was nervous to do it is because there's not a lot of prep. Like you're not making a trap and figuring out a DC and figuring out the damage per se. It's a lot of whatever degree of success or failure the player gets, you gotta on the spot think of it. And they have kind of tenets for the GM, like use up their resources, think of ways to push the drama forward. So like on a 7 to 9, it's supposed to be like a soft penalty, like, oh, you break that healing potion in your back pocket, or oh, your sword goes spinning off into the bushes, or something like that. Whereas on a 6, it's supposed to be something a little bit more harsh, like damage, or like a new enemy showing up in the middle of the encounter, or something like that. But yeah, so on anything from a 9 or less, I get to do something narratively. At a 10 plus, you're all just succeeding in. The second game was a lot of that. In the first one, I got to say a few more things. But anyway, Rekka, I want to know, because you started 5e as a halfling rogue, right?
Yeah. Gnome rogue, yeah.
No, oh, gnome rogue. Sorry. Okay, this is it's a smaller humanoid type.
A diminutive,
Small rogue.
Yeah,
beefy person type thing.
and you played a halfling thief, which is the rogue equivalent in Dungeon World. What were
Yes.
your thoughts, flavor-wise, mechanics-wise? What did you think?
Flavor-wise, mechanics-wise, well, it was kind of an opportunity for me to try that roguey armor back on, or that personality back on, of leaving the moral compass at home, and getting to kind of explore that other side of my personality a bit more. Yeah, I honestly thought, well, when we had Simmers, I thought, and you described it as like a lizard creature, I thought that it was going to be a dragonborn, and then we were introducing everybody, and I realized that I was actually the second tallest person in the group.
Of the small squad, yeah.
Yeah, the small squad, because we had a halfling, a salamander,
A goblin.
and a goblin.
Yeah.
And Jay's a gnome.
Oh, excellent. Small squad lives on. Yeah, I wanted to be able to kind of do the dexterous, flippy stuff, shoot some more darts from behind people's backs, and be sneaky and all those good things. I did think that it was really interesting how I'm not sure if it would even be called a character sheet, but like the explanation sheets of each class had the attacks all listed out, and they all have like really funny names, or a lot of them have funny names. And it says exactly what the effect is and the role, and it kind of describes it for you.
Yeah, the character sheets are meant to be, because it's meant to be pick up and play and like an introductory sort of thing. Like they're all class specific. It's not a generic one like it is in say 5e. And yeah, they have all the descriptions for everything right there for you. You picked up on all the things really quickly. You were poisoning people. You were trying to pick the pocket of the mayor after you had a tense debate over payment. Like you were thiefing it up real quick.
I don't get to explore that side of my personality in real life too much. So yeah, I was just wondering about it the other day of like, where does that come from? Why am I like this?
I felt like the level 1 cleric was probably the worst of the classes that are in the default book. I only got 2 spells, and my rotes weren't that versatile either. Like one of them was making a light, and the other one was, I can't remember. Oh yeah, asking for like a direction from God, like a direction to go.
Guidance, yeah.
So neither of those are super like versatile to apply to. Like thaumaturgy, you can kind of play around with a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I didn't have anything like thaumaturgy. And then I could only pick 2 spells. So I spent most of the time without even a healing spell, which was...
Dear. Hence all the healing potions.
Yeah, exactly. So I felt really restricted the whole time. And I don't... But like looking at all the other classes, they all have like really interesting like role play options that I don't think the cleric gets. Like I didn't see much of anything for the cleric as far as like a role play scenario ability.
So there's a more to maybe serve as a counterpoint, when you pick your deity and you pick a petition, you can actually, there's like another way to get guidance more than just like having your god point in a specific direction. They'll tell you something or give you a boon, but you have to petition your god based on the petition you pick. So it might be 30 lashes over the back with a whip if your petition is suffering, or helping feed a starving family if your petition is, generosity or something like that.
Even so, that's still not like a versatile roleplay ability.
I mean, with the family, at least you would need to, or like a generosity thing, I could see that being spun into the narrative pretty well of, oh, I need to find this family to help, or every time your party winds up attacking someone, you have to find somebody to save.
Yeah.
Sure, but like I'm just saying the bards get an ability whenever they go into a town, they can kind of learn something that's going on there, or they have songs that they can sing that will always do something. With the clerics, you really have your 2 spells and then your ability to turn away the undead, and your ability to do some rotes, which I don't know. I was looking over some of the other classes, and they all had abilities, but I think that there may have needed to be like some slight mods done to the cleric can't rote list that might have made it a little more flexible. Just access to like the wizard's thaumaturgy would have been enough, but I was always struggling with like how do I manifest my divine ability without burning one of my spell slots? Like how do I use this character in a way that's unique to this character? And with all the other classes, I felt like there was a little bit more of that
I find that so interesting you say that because I thought one of the most flavorful things you did was I think you communed with the stone, right?
Yeah.
And I thought there was some really interesting things there. And also your use of sanctuary, like they kind of kicked you out of the inn. And so you were like, okay, I'm going to create a sanctuary out here. And I tried to flavor it as like a stone hut almost.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought you were very rich with the RP.
Well, yeah, I mean, I used what I had, but I would have enjoyed a cantrip that was maybe a little more flexible.
A little more flexible.
Yeah. Like typically in your cleric cantrip list, you're talking about things like mending or guidance or something like that. Something you can use on someone else to grant them like some sort of ability modifier or something. Those little things just help to create that assistant. But there's not really the same kind of thing in this system, and none of the rotes really functioned that way. Fortunately, because I based the gnome off the dwarf, I did have that ability to commune with stone, but that's actually not part of the class. That was just the dwarven feature. So, I don't know. It's just something I noticed. Like, I think that they did a great job with a lot of the other classes of giving you something to... Like, with the Immolator, the ability to just always be shaping fire and changing fire up. That's like a very flavorful thing you can bring out anytime.
Cupcake used that sucker even in combat. That was useful.
And, like, I feel like the rogue, you know, you're going to have those poisons and then the sneaking abilities and the pickpocketing and lockpicking. You're always going to have little things that you can add to any scenario. But with the cleric, there wasn't like a little thing that I could do very often. So I was always really struggling with my, especially when we got into combat. Like, I had a sanctuary ability, and then I had another ability that made people afraid. And so I was just like, okay, fear every round. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Like, that's kind of what I had.
Fear of the Lord in your soul. It does sound like a kind of...
Exactly.
I don't know, like cut and dry kind of preacher character, which I don't...
Yeah, and it felt like a combat would get really, really sloggy. Yeah. Like, if we actually went to straight combat, because it's pretty much just like attack roll, attack roll, attack roll, attack roll. Like, so you really want to be using... This is a roleplay system. You want to be using roleplay solutions to your encounters. You don't want to be in the slog of just, like, trying to whittle away hit points. That seems pretty boring.
It definitely is trying to lead towards the narratively interesting, do the cool thing, as opposed to just whittle down hit points. And the thing is, anything that can do damage will do damage. Like Cupcake's ability to bend flame to her will is, I think, intended to be more so an RP thing, but because she was summoning up flame from, like, you know, the embers of a campfire and, you know, pulling it down on someone, was like, no, that's going to do damage. Within the crux of the narrative, that would do damage, so she got to roll it.
Absolutely.
So I think there are still fun ways to do the narrative thing and still get to roll some dice and hit some baddies. Yeah,
it's definitely a system that lends itself towards the narrative solution to a combat encounter, as opposed to that just getting to the slog of hit points, because the combat in this system is not super deep. It's definitely about the role play.
Yeah. I mean, like, it abstracts a lot of things that a lot of systems, like, there's no movement accounted for at all in the system.
One of the things I would probably change in this system, I would probably give people just 3 tiers of health. I would call them healthy, wounded, and dead, basically, and just do away with hit points, because I don't really know what the function of hit points are in this game. Like, if you're mostly a narrative game, I don't know why you would resolve combat that way.
I mean, I was thinking it's sort of like a beginner level D&D to kind of get people, like, here's the flavor of it, like, get used to the idea of rolling dice and keeping track of your hit points. But I have to agree, the tracking the hit points wasn't super useful for our game.
Yeah. I don't think anybody was ever, hit point wise, in danger of dying.
Oh, none of you were in danger of dying? I thought I got you a few good times.
It's like, I'm going to have to work on that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I got...
Kill him more!
I got damaged several times, but I feel like if I was to run the system in any serious way, I'd probably... I don't think that a combat would be very fun in this game if it got down to the nitty-gritty of just, you know, dealing damage. So I would probably go a little more loosey-goosey with it, just to encourage those creative choices.
Like a 3-strike, sure. I like that idea, actually. Like, I like the 3 strikes and you're out kind of idea.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Choose Your Own Adventure books, like the R.L. Stein books, where it does have a lot more direction and I guess options that are fed to you that then you pick from, instead of in D&D sometimes the options are just so limitless that it's like, what do you want to say to this person? And you just kind of sit there, or at least I just kind of sit there and try to think of like, what is a useful question, as opposed to, oh, you can ask the DM any of these 6 questions and they will answer you.
I did really like that because at least first starting, and I know I've had friends that are like, oh, D&D's rad, I don't know where to start. It can be a little overwhelming, and this helps you like kind of put your mind there and figure out, is this something that I want to go to the next level and do those point buys, or however you choose to do your sheets.
It's a gateway RPG, yeah.
Yeah.
Get you into the harder stuff.
And it definitely helps me focus on like what questions are good to ask, because like when I get overly creative with why can't I do this spell and have it do this other cool thing that I want it to do, it's like, okay, let's focus on what is a good question to ask about this scenario. Like, do I notice anything strange here?
Yeah, it's the discern realities, I think is what they call it, which is like a combo. It's the whiz-based check, which is a combo like insight check,
Perception,
perception, investigation, that kind of thing.
It's like, what do I pick up on about this environment?
Yes, and so the questions are very generic around like, what has happened here recently, what is about to happen, what here is of use to me, that sort of thing.
What should I be on the lookout for?
Exactly.
Who's really in control?
Yeah, exactly. So those sorts of questions, they're great in that they're generic, because then they give the GM a chance to spin. But I also find that they're a good way to push the narrative forward. The whole philosophy of Dungeon World is play to find out what happens. So I think someone asked that question, who here is really in control, or what here, I think Rekka asked what here is not as it appears. And I was like, oh shit, I don't know. And I can't just say no. I can't just say no, everything here is above board, you don't get any ill sense. But I was like, no, there's got to be something. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to have the bartender be the guy who's kind of telling the bounty hunter where they are. Like, he's going to be ill at ease because he's putting these folks up and putting on the guise of Mr. Nice Guy, here are my favorite clients, when really he's feeding information to one of the people who's trying to track them down. And so I think I just kind of insinuated that he was looking over unseemly when Jay's cleric came in and started talking about, y'all need to follow me, you're gonna save the world.
Oh my god.
It was...
Jay, I love you, but that character... I hated that character with passion. I hated him so much.
It's alright, it was mutual. I wasn't a super fan of Simber either.
She's just crazy.
Yeah, she is. She's intense.
I think you're both crazy in your own special ways, and that's why I love your PC so much.
It's true.
One of the things I like about a narrative system, I was thinking about this recently, because as I'm sure most people listening to this know, we're all big fans of the C Team. And I think you're right, Jay. When you say Jerry is too soft, I think what it is he's given his players like ultimate abilities that they always have on deck that require no save and no roll. And I think he's done that because he just wants to see what they'll say or do.
Well, I mean, it's a live stream show too. It's got to advance at a
pretty fast clip, yeah.
Yeah, you can't really afford to get bogged down in 30-40 minute combats too often. So having these get out of jail free cards is an excellent solution to the live play problem.
Or like, oh, I want to do this cool thing, but I used all my spell slots earlier to make food. So I guess I'll just do another strike with my sword. That's a 2d6.
Yeah, like Critical Role.
But yeah, so I think that, like you were saying, this is a nice middle ground of consequence and cost, but with maybe a more open concept set of abilities. I really like that that's what you did for Jiraika's Hordes, not Hordes persons, Obviator bag, that it's kind of within these limitations, what kind of crazy plan can you hatch?
Yeah. It almost gives you more freedom that way, where you're like, well, at least now I have something that I can jump off from, instead of, here is the entire world, do something cool.
Yeah, yeah. But my heart does ache for 5e. I'm very much looking forward to getting back to our campaign where my PC is pinned under a bunch of rocks and is dead. So
Oh no.
fun times, fun times.
He's not pinned under rocks.
I think
That's a lie.
I got out. I only had to watch a lady that I like get smooshed.
It's fine. Don't.
It's not gonna
Don't
be
bring us down.
fine.
He's snuggling a dead body
He is.
and has
It's dark.
the intellectual capacity of a goldfish.
Oh, right, I'm feeble-minded too.
I'm a nice DM, I promise.
You're definitely
yes,
a
I'm-
great DM.
Am I?
You're a great DM and a terrible person.
There you go. I can live with that.
No, I love you.
Yeah, no. So I will say this in retrospective of Dungeon World. I think as a DM playing this system, I think I definitely took away some things that were interesting. I think I definitely took away a few ideas. I mean, the 3 tiers of failures is certainly a great idea. So there's a couple options there as far as things to take away. The other thing that I would say that I really liked about Dungeon World is I liked that there were the ability to preserve spells and things like that by succeeding really well. And I like that when you fail utterly, you got a resource that made failure not feel so bad. Critical Role did a thing recently where they donated $100 to a charity every time they rolled a natural 1.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so it made failing checks like a little less painful. Like, hey, $100. One night they gave $1,000 to charity.
Wow. That makes it sting a lot less.
Yeah, they were like, well, this has been a shitty night for our rolls, but it's been great for charity, so it's fine.
It's been great for children and literacy skills.
Yeah.
Exactly. So attaching a positive reinforcer to a negative outcome is something that I would definitely be interested in. Maybe something like granting DM inspiration when somebody rolls a natural 1, something like that.
I would be so set.
Might be, yeah.
Just
It might
stockpile
be.
them.
It might be cool, though, just like to have some resource that you could carry forward from failure. So if you roll under a skill check's threshold where you fail your save or you fail your check or ability, maybe you gain some sort of resource of some kind. Maybe not inspiration, but something that you could utilize later to cash in and make that not feel so painful.
Oh,
Might
do,
be
like,
interesting.
a point buy and maybe roll on a table to see if you could get like a healing potion or a magic item, something like that.
Yeah, I think it would make it a lot more fun / possibly a better hook for new players. Like, I'm actually considering maybe running a game of Dungeon World with, like, my family, like my parents and sister, of like, hey, so you've all been very supportive of me playing this Dungeons and Dragons thing all the time. Let's give you a taste of a nicer version of it.
A little more
That's
streamlined.
a really cool idea.
That is. You'll have to let us know how it goes.
Wish me luck.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad to know that there was some inspiration going forward from that to spread the TTRPG love out to more folks.
And I definitely want to, next time we take a break, I definitely want to try another system. I want to try the system that has the escalation dice next. I want to see how that system plays. I've always been interested about incorporating the escalation dice because the concept is interesting to me, but I want to see how it plays in its original format before I start tinkering with it outside. So I've always been very comfortable with Dungeons and Dragons, and I like Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and I think it's the best game that was ever made. So I've never been super excited about trying other systems, but I think it's good to get out of your comfort zone, because even if you do always go back to Dungeons and Dragons, there are things that you can take back with you from playing these other games. There are things that you can gain, and I think being open to learning new things and experiencing new things is something we should strive for in all facets of our life.
Absolutely. Well said. I think that's it.
And I had fun.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just an inevitability of our little group here. No matter what we're doing, we will have fun.
Thank you all so much for joining us on this episode of Insight Check. We would love to thank Vinswept for our beautiful intro and outro music called Never Stand Alone, and the amazing Amy T. Falcone. She is beauty, she is grace. She drew pictures of our face.
It's true.
Without you, we would not have faces. We would love to invite you to give us ratings and reviews on iTunes. We do read those and we greatly, greatly appreciate them. 5 stars, if you give us 5 stars, DM will give you inspiration on your next roll. Don't tell him we said that.
This offer valid only at your DMJ's table.
Someone who plays in one of your games is going to listen to this and try to cash in on it, right, Jay?
Me.
Listen, that's okay by me. As long as they're reviewing the show, I don't care.
Yeah, they can have inspiration for days. Yeah.
There you go.
Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
Was
Insight.
Check!
Woo! Got it in one.
To heck with you, Jiraiya. I took it back. It's mine now. It's been a couple of long ones. I wouldn't mind a shorty.
You wouldn't mind a shoddy?
That was the other Halfling episode.